Good afternoon, everyone. Um, Thank you for joining us today. My name is Angie Clark, and I am part of the marketing team here at Perficient. On behalf of our entire team, I'd like to thank you once again for joining today's webinar. Before we move on to our presentation around making the most of Power Platform with a Center of Excellence, I did want to review a few basic housekeeping items with everyone. First, all participants on this call are in listen-only mode, which means everyone is on mute. However, you can submit questions to the speakers, and we encourage you to do so at any time today by typing those in the chat window, which is located in the control bar on the right side of your screen. Please make sure you state your questions clearly and keep in mind that other webinar participants cannot see your questions and vice versa. As such, your questions to the speakers will be anonymously addressed as time allows towards the end of our presentation. If you still have unanswered questions after the webinar or would like to request information from our experts, please feel free to reach out to our speakers directly. You can also fill out the Contact Us forms located on our Perficient.com website. Please note that today's webinar is being recorded and will be sent to you within the next few business days. A link to the slides will also be included. Now that we've covered a few webinar-related items, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. On the call with us is Joel Olson. Joel is a Microsoft MVP and Regional Director and Perficient Director of Modern Workplace Practice here at Perficient. He drives strategy and evangelism on modern productivity, modern workplace communication, portals, and collaboration. He is joined by Eric Schmidt. Eric is a Microsoft Solutions Architect here at Perficient, focused on modern productivity and collaboration solutions within our modern workplace practice. Now that we've done those introductions, Joel, I will turn it over to you.
Great. It's great to be here. It's going to be a fantastic day, and I'm excited about the topic. You know, Power Platform is probably one of the most exciting things that's happening in the Microsoft space right now. But before I do, let me tell you a little about Perficient. Perficient itself is a global company. While our practice is focused mainly on in the Americas, in North America, we actually have staff that are located throughout the world, and we have 35 global locations. We are a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ, and we have over 4,500 colleagues who work with us at Perficient. And we'll go to the next slide. And Perficient has been a Microsoft partner since the beginning. In fact, it's one of our main businesses, but it's also something we bring to the table is we actually do have practices at Perficient, not only in Microsoft, but as well Oracle, Adobe. We do things in data and analytics. We work in all the clouds, all the Microsoft clouds as well. So you will see us working in Azure, Dynamics, the telephony side of Teams, and when you talk about the Power Platform as an example, we really work on it from end to end. We've been a Microsoft partner for a long time as a gold partner as well. So for today, our agenda, we really want to talk about this movement. There's a massive movement around this kind of maker culture, being able to empower the business itself. You know, before Microsoft was kind of calling it citizen developer, and you know, it's like this non-developer, but it's instead of saying it's the no code, low code, it's actually somebody who's empowered to be able to do things in the business. And so I want to talk about this maker culture and this movement, and as well this idea of a center of excellence, which is really why we're here today. We call it the COE, or the kind of this Power Platform Center of Excellence. So we want to talk about why you would build one, how to build one, talking about the various roles and teams as part of the COE. And Microsoft has actually done some great initiatives toward this as well. They've actually built something called the Microsoft Power Platform COE Starter Kit, which is a great way to kind of help get your arms around governance in the Power Platform, which is I would say one of the most immediate things that people get concerned about is how do you keep your arms around something where any user is empowered to be able to build business applications? So I want to talk then about the Perficient approach, and there's a lot of people who may have heard about the fact that SharePoint 2010 workflows are not only deprecated but basically being blocked in SharePoint Online. So people who have business data, and especially those who have business processes, we want to make sure you're aware of the impact based on the announcement from this last week, but also what the strategy can be going forward, and how Power Platform actually plays into that with Power Automate replacing the functionality that was in SharePoint 2010 and 2013 workflows. Let's go next. So what is this? What is the Microsoft Power Platform? Power Platform isn't a single product. It's really a suite of products that are Microsoft's low-code platform across the Microsoft 365, Office 365, Dynamics, integrates with Azure. And as you dig into these various Power suite of tools, you'll notice that there's a ton of integration with a lot of different SaaS tools and on-premise tools with, say, gateways and so on. So let's first talk about Power BI. Power BI is all about analytics. And it's been around probably the longest when you look at all these other tools. Power BI plugs into SharePoint as a dashboard, an analytics tool. Really, it has its own licensing even. There's Power Apps, which is for application development, and it's the one we're probably going to be talking about the most today, along with Power Automate. But Power Apps absolutely did replace the functionality of InfoPath and SharePoint Designer, not just working with SharePoint, but being able to work with Dynamics and building business applications. It was actually originally designed to be able to build apps in mobile for the enterprise. And it's really grown up to be able to build really incredible experiences and very, very innovative tools and suites for the enterprise. And even though we say low code, there's some serious developers who actually use Power Apps and Power Automate to build and orchestrate incredible applications. It's not just small little simple tools. It's incredible actually what you can do with these. So Power Automate in the Power Platform is the one that's actually focused on automation. It's process automation. Used to be called Flow, formerly known as Flow. When you create a flow for Power Automate, you're basically doing orchestration. You're saying, if this, then that. If this happens, then do this. And it's really kind of a linear set of approval workflows, or being able to say, hey, when somebody uploads, then do this. And there's 400 plus connectors for Power Automate. Then you've got the Power Virtual Agents. Think chatbot. Think the ability to actually have a platform of developing business applications with a virtual agent. So this is a really serious ability to be able to build solutions for the business, leveraging a virtual agent type technology. Goes a lot further than, say, the bot SDK that Microsoft previously released. And backing all this, you'll notice there's data connectors. So those connectors allow you to connect to various types of business data, not just data that's actually in Microsoft 365 or Dynamics, but Salesforce and ServiceNow, and you think about all the different places, Workday, where all your data is, there's likely a connector. And if there's not, there are webhooks, there are other ways of being able to kind of use web connections and so on to be able to connect to your business data. You've got AI Builder to be able to build your business models. And now obviously that's only getting richer as time goes on, and especially with things like Project Cortex. for being able to build full-on business applications connecting to your data. Then you've got the common data service, which traditionally has been used for working with your Dynamics entities, but as well as a very powerful service for being able to build rich applications. And let's go on to the next one. So let's talk about the Power Platform. Now, I want to start off by saying there's actually a movement that has, even before the Power Platform, there's this maker movement that's been going on. It's this DIY culture. In the business, I think that you could say that it's a little bit of that shadow apps. This idea that the business themselves can be empowered and have enough technical know-how to put together solutions. And with this, it's the idea of being able to take existing, inexpensive, kind of clever solutions and building distributed, democratized sets of tools. And this is absolutely this kind of DIY revolution that's happening inside of the enterprise. And especially when you start looking at the community, you'll find that there's a lot of these makers, and it's like some of them embrace developer, some of them are like, no, I'm not a developer, and they don't like you calling them citizen developer. So trying to figure out who are these people in the business who have this technical know-how, but haven't necessarily been trained in technology, but have figured out how to make things work. And Microsoft really is trying to empower them with this. Let's go to the next one. So who are these makers? These are people who are, it's kind of the horizontal IT. These are people that are actually in the business. They're embedded in the business. They look different in every organization. It could be somebody who's supporting an application, these business applications. It could be somebody in a product line. They're very eager. And you talk about it from a UI perspective. They may understand their application, but being able to then leverage Microsoft to be able to pull it together to create some automation, or being able to create an interaction with a chatbot, or and so on. Let's go to the next one. So what is a Power Platform Center of Excellence? This idea of Center of Excellence isn't new. There have been other technology centers of excellence, but this idea of pulling together a center of excellence is being able to pull together a group of people responsible for nurturing the growth of Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, and Power Virtual Agents inside, or Virtual Assistant in the organization. And so the COE basically pulls together governance, best practices, kind of being able to set up some policies, working with IT, and it really does take a lot of coordination across. But I wanted to start with a poll. And in this poll, we basically want to say, where are you in your adoption of the Power Platform? So where we're trying to say, where it's basically a maturity model, if you think about it. Are you in the process of simply evaluating the Power Platform? Are you in the middle of adoption, kind of helping people understand what it is? In fact, you could say there's some people who they may feel like they are behind the 8 ball here, where they actually, it's kind of gone wild a little bit. And you're trying to get your arms around it, and that may be why you're here trying to understand the COE, which absolutely governance and the best practices are a part of this. The other thing here we're looking at, there may be some Power Apps and some flows that have gained momentum. I find that that's actually where it starts to gain some traction, where there's one that all of a sudden, hey, we're running our business on Power Apps, and nobody even realizes that it hasn't been sanctioned by IT yet. And that's that next level where, hey, Power Apps and Power Automate may be actually critical to the business. So thanks for those who have voted. I'm going to close the poll. And I'm actually going to share the results because I do want you guys to see this. So you can see who's online today. It looks like most of the people online are in the process of evaluating the Power Platform. Um, there's not that many who have broad adoption yet, but there are some who do have critical Power Apps and Power Automate flows in their organizations, and there's about nearly a third of the audience who have some Power Apps and Power Automate flows that are and gaining more momentum. So that's very interesting, and helps here. All right, so let's go back to the slides. So we can go to the next one. Yeah. So when you talk about building a Power Platform Center of Excellence, I kind of think about, well, what is governance in and of itself? It's about people, process, and technology. How do we orchestrate those things coming together? Because it's understanding the roles and responsibilities of people, being able to set up policies and process. There's some education aspects to this, absolutely, around adoption. There's a championship program, maybe it's a user group. How do we actually empower people and keep them connected? And absolutely, when we talk about the Microsoft starter kit, it's trying to figure out who are the people who are building these applications and nurturing them, helping them make sure that they actually get the tools and the platform they need. And then there's the various kind of rapid prototyping. And in some cases, there may need to be some licenses that are required. And so you want to make this smooth, working with the business, but at the same time, this maker movement and the idea that the business can actually solve their own problems, fantastic. How do we coordinate that? And that's absolutely one of the reasons you want to do this. Let's go to the next one. So I'm going to transition this to Eric for a second to talk about the vision.
All right, thanks, Joel. So what is the vision of the Power Platform Center of Excellence? What value are we trying to provide? What behaviors are we trying to create? So why do we use a Power Platform in the first place? Well, we're creating low-code, no-code solutions that can be built much quicker at a lower cost than traditional development. So when we talk about the makers are creating applications. They're in the business. They know the business problem, and if they have training on the tool set, they can create solutions very quickly. So the Power Platform tools are set up to create simple applications that are continuously improved. And when used correctly, you can quickly create applications that are a minimum viable product. So not a lot of feature bloat, not a lot of bells and whistles, but how do we create applications that can help to enable our business as quick as possible? Many of the developers we're targeting, they're already creating solutions one way or the other. The makers will find a way. Maybe they have access databases, on their hard drive. Maybe they're using an unsanctioned software as a service solution. But one of the things we're talking about today is that by creating applications, Power Apps, Power Automates, on the Power Platform, we can bring them into a circle of trust. So we know what the applications are, we know how often they're used, we understand the business processes that we're supporting, but at the same time, we're enabling the community to create their own solutions. Oftentimes in large organizations, a lot of the funding goes towards large enterprise applications. As a result, some of the department level applications that may be a bit of a one-off that do require some application work may be deprioritized, and maybe it's hard to for IT to support those departments in creating those applications. So those low-hanging fruit type applications are generally a good fit for the Power Platform. And of course, a lot of organizations don't have many, if any, mobile apps. So the Power Apps are a great way to bring your line of business applications onto the mobile device. We also envision systems integrations taking place on the Power Platform through a use of a of consistent and shared connectors. And we also envision a lot of the applications we create on the Power Platform having a similar look and feel. So in terms of, some people are evaluating the platform. Do you just start and you start building your Power Platform, Center of Excellence right away? We think this is something you sort of gear up to, right? So as we get going, typically we do briefings and demos. We'll do some proof of concepts. Then we'll take one of those proof of concepts or several of those proof of concepts and get that into production. And then as the use of the Power Platform grows, as it is evangelized within the organization, we start to have multiple applications and critical production applications. Then we get into the area where we may need a little more attention. We may need a bit more of a focus on some of these Center of Excellence concepts. So as we're looking into form the Center of Excellence within our organization, what do we need to do? We need to form the team. Do we, have these people on our team? Do we need training? Do we need outside support? How can we deliver some quick wins to show the value of the Power Platform? How can we educate our leadership and really get them behind this? Because we're going to do a lot of evangelism on the platform. We're going to make some noise, right? We want to make sure everybody's on the same page and is behind the use of the Power Platform. Technically, we'll establish best practices, reference architectures. We may extract some data into the common data service, make sure it's cleaned up. So there is a technical aspect to building the Center of Excellence. And again, planning to engage our builders and evangelize the platform. So how do we see this being structured in an organization? So we break up the roles, or maybe if this is a larger organization and we're going to expand the use of the Power Platform greatly in our organization, these may be 4 separate teams. So we break them up into 4 quadrants here. So we have a group called the champions. So this group will support the builders or the citizen developers. We have the organizational change agents. So they're there to support and build a community around the use of the Power Platform. We have a development team or a development responsibility. So this would be your typical app dev type team. And we also have an operations engineering group. So this group would be a bit more behind the scenes, a bit more technical, and they'd be there to support the application development community. So going a little bit further into these responsibilities, the champions team or role has your traditional support responsibilities, but in addition to making sure that the enterprise applications are up and running, they'll also provide help and ongoing mentoring to the builder community. They'll do internal consulting. They'll also help to triage new requests for Power Platform solutions. So again, this is our traditional support group, plus some more builder-facing responsibilities. Organizational change agents, so they help with communications, they help to create awareness, they help to create a community of practice. So by creating a community of practice, we don't just mean creating a make or yammer community. We can envision scenarios where you go into your cafeteria, for instance, and you see a banner or an advertisement on a television about the value of the Power Platform. They hold classroom training. They facilitate the construction of proof of concepts. They help to distribute success stories. So we may have a group of champions that meets once a month, once a quarter, to sort of do a show and tell and to update the community on changes to the Power Platform. This group may also do a hackathon. So we may do, 4 weeks of lunch and learns that lead up to an event where we organize teams within an organization. We have some prizes, and then the teams will basically create a Power Platform application with a certain theme. So for instance, within Perficient, right now we're running a back to work hackathon where we are using the Power Platform to create tools that assist a person with either working remotely or coming back into the office. The development team would be involved in typical app development responsibilities. So oftentimes one of the ways we get these Center of Excellences running is through the migration of legacy applications. So by legacy applications, of course, we mean InfoPath, SharePoint Designer workflows. We also may be replacing any number of sort of on-prem or legacy business process management type solutions, and providing some business value and some good ROI by consolidating onto the M365 environment and taking advantage of some of your investments there. The team will also build some reusable utilities and components that they can share with the other groups. The ops and engineering team, so they're there in a little bit behind the curtain, if you will. So they're responsible for setting up the environments, for providing reusable utilities. If, for instance, there's data that one of the builders needs that isn't currently in the common data service, that isn't currently within the Power Platform, we don't expect the builders to go into a SQL database or to process a text file and create a web service. Instead, that request for items that are out of the technical range of the builders would go to the ops and engineering team in this case, and it would be put on their backlog. So this is a way that we can support the builders that typically can go like 90% of the way in creating their own application. How do we get them over that 10%? Part of the solution is this ops and engineering team, in addition to the support of the champions team board role. So this team is also responsible for the implementation of the COE starter kit that Joel will walk you through. And they're also responsible for monitoring activity. An example of why we do this is, let's say a user in accounting has created a Power App, and we understand its use case, and month after month there's just 10 people using it, and then we run our report in the third month and we see it has 5,000 users. So it's great that that application has received so much attention and a lot of traffic, but we may want to reach out to the builder in accounting and try to again figure out what's going on and making sure that Power App or that Power Automate flow is being implemented correctly. So if there are things that are critical in our environment, we need to monitor the environment so that we understand that. So Joel, I'll hand it back over to you to discuss the setup of the COE starter kit. So again, this is something that your ops and engineering team or role would be responsible for setting up.
Sure. So I think one of the first questions that people ask when you're talking about Power Platform, and you're talking about the business being able to do this low code, no code development and being able to kind of leverage the Power Platform. And the first thing I would mention here is this idea of environments. So when you first start talking about it, there's people who they think about, oh, well, we can do this in production. Well, ideally, rather than building stuff in production, you can actually use this capability called environments, where you can have separate environments for your different business units, but also being able to have environments for, say, business unit development, kind of proof of concepts, or being able to do development separate from their production. And with the capabilities of the tools, it's not difficult then to be able to say save an app and then be able to roll it to another environment. So this concept of environments allows this concept of dev, test, production, being able to have separate environments for different business units and separate environments for pre-production versus production. It's also another way to be able to kind of validate your connectors being able to validate that your business processes are working appropriately. And when you go into troubleshooting, you want to be able to fix problems. And while in, say, legacy SharePoint workflows or with, say, tools you used to build in SharePoint Designer, it's much better than it used to be in terms of being able to support multiple environments. And this concept of environments is supported with both your Azure AD tenant as well as your M365 kind of capabilities. It's being able to support in a single tenant, being able to have multiple environments. Let's go on to the next one. So announcing the enterprise tooling, this Microsoft COE starter kit. You can get to that COE starter kit by going to aka.ms/COE starter kit. And it basically has a bunch of really cool templates focused on administration, governance, really helps you get a handle on what this is. This COE starter kit's a collection of components and tools helping you get started. It was something that the patterns and practices folks have been working with as well. There is some community projects related to it. If you see things that you'd like to improve, absolutely, this is kind of community-based tools, but it's things that basically there was a customer who was doing some awesome stuff with it, and Microsoft saw what they're doing with it, and they kind of incorporated those best practices and brought them in and brought it to the level of being able to be a toolkit that the rest of the organizations can use. If you want to go to the next slide. So this is a kind of a zoomed in view of the COE starter kit. I may call it the toolkit, but basically we're not just looking at Power Apps. We're looking at Power Apps, Power Automate. You can see the flows, your environments, the connectors, the makers, connections. So if we look at this kind of Power BI dashboard of everything that's going on, you can see across the tenant, you can see there's 57 environments. You can see the top applications and who's created what. So you can actually see the top makers. You can focus on your Power Apps or your flows, and you can see where around the world, where are those makers hanging out from a community perspective, and being able to see the environments, the number of apps, how many have been created recently. There's a lot of even cool things related to governance, and let's go on to the next one. So basically, you'll notice as well, these are 3 examples where you can see, like as an example, there's a compliance aspect. So a little toolkit that basically evaluates the Power Apps to see if they're meeting your compliance requirements from the Developer Compliance Center. Another one is the one in the middle there. It's looking at a flow, a Power Automate flow, and somebody's trying to use a connector that hasn't been approved. So you talk about the ability to have governance and being able to say, hey, these are the connectors we support. If you want an additional connector, you need to talk to us so we can enable your connectors. It enables the business to be able to do what they need to do, but you can still kind of set up some guardrails essentially. And then in this last example, if you have applications that have been created, but they haven't been used in some period of time, like say, maybe it's been 6 months and somebody's even used this, well, you can ping the owner and say, hey, is this still needed? So you can actually keep ahead of the legacy applications that may be difficult to maintain over time. And before that person leaves the company, being able to say, hey, is this still in use and who's using it? So you can actually have owners. There's ownership tracking. So if somebody even leaves, you can assign a new owner of an application. So it really allows you to be able to, like I said, kind of keep your arms around what's going on in your environment. Let's go to the next one. Another kind of Power BI type dashboard. We're looking at an overview dashboard of the environments, looking at Power Platform dashboard. So you can see the active makers, Like we can see, Megan has actually been very busy with 229 applications. That's a ton. Then we have the different active environments. So you can see the difference between these two, the number of apps versus the number of flows. And then you have your active makers on the other side. So you can see various charts and reports, and being able to see even applications by name, who the owners are, when they were created, when they were last modified. And this is a dashboard that you can jump into at any time. This isn't some run a PowerShell script, stuff it in Excel and then do all your sorting and reporting and trying to figure out things. You've actually got your ability to sit on top of this and be able to understand what's being created in what environment, who is it, so we can actually reach out and build a community, set policies based on intelligent conversations, manage the connectors, manage the applications. And you can even see even virtual agents is something listed in this of the dashboard, where we can actually get a handle on what's happening across the applications that are being built by the makers in our organization. Really powerful. Let's go to the next one. So Eric's gonna dive into our approach.
Thanks. So we're gonna just go through some of the steps and some of the phases that we see in sort of standing up or implementing a Power Platform COE. So we're gonna talk through envisioning, how we assess legacy applications, setting up a program. We'll reiterate some of the governance topics. Then we'll talk about scheduling and application support. So in envisioning, obviously the initial phase here. You know, the team needs to get on board and understand what our business drivers are and our priorities are for implementing the Power Platform. So again, what is the case for change? What is the long-term vision of the Power Platform? Do we see it being used just in the back office? Do we see it supporting field workers? You know, what in the end do we want to do where we can get the maximum value out of the platform? Are there legacy technologies within the organization that we'd like to evaluate for consolidation under the Power Platform? What data is important in the organization for us to import into the common data service to make available to the builder community? Who really are our builders in the organization, and how can we best support them? Can we help to evangelize and educate people in the organization who may be skeptical of the use of the platform through the creation of proof of concepts? And then, of course, are we going to need additional licensing to take advantage of some of the tools that we want to use in the organization? So after envisioning, typically we'll do an existing application assessment. So this is a focus on reviewing existing legacy solutions. So again, you know, access databases, info paths, legacy BPM solutions, you know, old applications that are a good fit for the Power Platform. Just where are some of the older items we can modernize in our environment and move on to the Power Platform? And again, you know, what new requests for applications do we have? What new needs can we fulfill through the use of the Power Platform? So again, just sort of building a backlog here. After we build the backlog, or we have a scan with results of the legacy applications, we typically will work with administrators or application owners to sort of fill out our knowledge and our understanding of the inventory. And then as we complete the inventory, typically you'll go through a categorization phase. So what legacy application or what application need will go to what part of the Power Platform? Will some of the applications sort of spin off and are better served as a custom application? What's high, medium, and low complexity? So all this work can help us sort of create a roadmap. So the key legacy solution we're sort of looking at this month is the retirement of the SharePoint 2010 workflows. So Jill's going to walk us through basically how do we do this existing application assessment, this assessment of the legacy solution in the case of the SharePoint 2010 workflows.
Great. So basically, let me start with, it was only about a week ago or so that that Microsoft announced that the SharePoint Workflow 2010 would be essentially in August, they would cut it off so that you couldn't create new ones. But before I even mention that, apparently a year ago, Microsoft said, hey, there is going to be a time where we turn these things off. And a lot of people may have missed that memo. So now that there's this announcement, hey, no new 2010 workflows in August of 2020, it's July 16th. So that might be a surprise to some. The part that's actually even more impactful is that in November 2020, SharePoint 2010 workflows will block the ability to run or create on existing tenants. So while they're going to block 2010 workflows for new tenants in August, it's basically November is the one that really starts affecting people who are already there, who already have workflows. So it's definitely important for you to understand that. Now you do have the ability to say download those workflows for some period of time, because it's February 2021 where they're actually going to remove those workflows. So the announcement's a bit rough, basically saying, hey, by November 1st, you really need to be able to have these things either removed or if you don't touch them, Microsoft's going to remove them eventually. But if you're still using those, and if you look at the comments on the announcement, you can actually see there's a lot of people who actually have some pretty critical business processes running on SharePoint 2010 workflows. And the story really in a nutshell is you need to do this assessment, understand the workflows you've got. And we're talking about primarily SharePoint Online. I want to make sure that that's very apparent. On premises, yes, you have more time. Those are your environments. From a supportability perspective, if you're running 2016 or 2019, if you look at the very bottom there, you'll notice, yes, SharePoint Designer 2013 created workflows will be supported with SharePoint 2016 and SharePoint 2019 on premise, at least through July 2026. So there's those who are on premise, you can breathe a little bit more easily. Those who are in SharePoint Online who may be running with legacy workflows, especially those 2010 ones, there's a definite call to action here. I've got this slide deck. If you're wondering about the slide deck, yes, there are 3 links at the bottom there. The first one is the announcement that basically talks through the specifics of what's happening when. The next one is the support related one that talks about supportability. And the third one has links to the tool. It's the workflow guidance and kind of talking you through some of the details I'll be talking about in the next couple slides, but it's basically talking about the SharePoint 2010 workflows and guidance. Those of you may be looking at this and saying, hey, is this related to InfoPath and SharePoint Designer? Absolutely. If you're talking about SharePoint Designer, your Designer will be blocked starting in August 2020 with the online tenants. So if you're still using SharePoint Designer, it's definitely time to not use that for workflows. It's time to move to Power Automate, part of this Power Platform we've been talking about today. Let's move on to the next slide. So there are some considerations. The document that I just referred to goes into some of this quite a bit in a bit more detail, but basically there's some things to be aware of. The first one here that I definitely want to call out, I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but the idea that it's a 30-day run limit for a flow. If there's something where there's a clock on it, where it's calling itself, or it's kind of a cyclical workflow, these are things that actually need to be finished within 30 days. So you may actually want to consider a third party if you need a flow that lasts longer than 30 days. So that's definitely something to be aware of. There's the kind of if statement limit where it's limited date levels. You got to be careful about your HTTP connector. That does consume a premium connector. So one of the recommendations here, even from Microsoft, is to consider using a service account to consolidate those onto a single service account, and then having the license on that particular service account. Other considerations, things like looking at the connectors. You know, is the connector that particular workflow use, is it a premium connector? That might be a licensing consideration. The way that they store their history is a consideration, but as I talked about as well in the beginning, we talk about that 30-day limit. There's a looping. You got to be careful about looping commands that are limited to basically iterating through 5,000 items without premium licensing. So there's a number of considerations here. If you need help looking at any of your workflows, we absolutely are going to allocate some office hours to be able to basically say, you know, we can spend a couple hours helping customers that may need help kind of talking through their situation. And we're talking some free office hours. So if you just want to be able to just have an open conversation about where you're at, absolutely, you'll find our contact information at the end here. Let's go to the next slide. So how you should be approaching this. This is a very simple kind of step-by-step, and there's Todd Clint did a 3-part series. If you're planning on digging in and doing this on your own, highly recommend you check out Todd Clint. If you want to just take a screenshot, it's a very simple link there at the bottom. Todd Clint's a great IT pro, kind of a PowerShell guru, great on SharePoint, good friend of mine. The first little box there is the SharePoint modernization scanner. Basically, you select your authentication option, and this is a self-executing. If you download the app, you run it, there is no install. It runs and says, hey, let's connect to your environment. So you're basically going to do the Azure AD apps, which is the preferred one, or you can do Azure ACS. It's a little bit more complicated, but you do that Azure AD, you put in your credentials and your certificate if needed for MFA and so on. Then you connect. What you're going to choose there is the classic workflow usage. So basically, step 1, run this modernization scanner, which is going to help you find all your workflows. It's actually going to give you a pretty incredible report. You're then going to be able to filter by usage and history. And then is the business decisions. You know, do you want to hire somebody to help you? Which ones do you actually want to keep? Which ones do you want to get rid of or just ignore? Because Microsoft's going to clean them up anyway. It's kind of the hire versus build decision there. And if you need some help on analysis, or if you need help on the migrating those or rebuilding those in Power Apps or some third-party tool, let me know. That's one where we absolutely can step in to help people who are trying to get to the Power Platform. Now let's go to the next slide. This is actually what the report looks like from that modernization tool. And I know that's a little bit difficult to tell, but basically it gives you workflow details. It'll show you the workflow version. It's the 2010 ones that we're most concerned about right now. So it'll actually give you a breakdown of your 2010 workflows. There's an upgradability score that you get. So there's quite a bit of detail. There's even last modified. So your ability to kind of grovel through this information and come up with a list of tools. And yes, I did get permission from Todd Clint to be able to share this little bit here. It's a very short time period, and I really wanted to be able to share this with you guys. Yeah, so that assessment or analysis, definitely feel free to reach out. Let's go to the next one. And back to you.
Thanks, Joel. So that was an example. Well, actually, before we get going further, we can launch a poll here to sort of discuss whether or not some of the people on the call have any SharePoint 2010 workflows. If you think this is a problem for you, we'd be interested to know. So we talked through how we would do an assessment on a legacy environment, or the SharePoint 2010 being the topic. So again, we scan, we review the results, we see what's in use. We may have to clarify how the legacy application is used with the application owner. Oftentimes it is difficult to hunt down in some environments who owns the legacy application. So after we have our assessment complete, then we start to put together a program. So coming up with standard processes and procedures to support communication. How are we going to create reusable processes and procedures to map and migrate content? How do we judge our success, right? How do we build that community? What's our program going to look like? How do we create the community of practice? How are we going to escalate issues? What are our training materials going to look like? So there's a lot of work here to build that COE program. As our program develops, there is the task of physically implementing the governance. So setting up data loss prevention, establishing environment strategy, physically setting up that COE starter kit, establishing procedures for us to periodically review the reports in the COE starter kit, and just have a plan and an approach to enable self-service and to enable the builders in the organization as part of our governance implementation. So after our governance is all set up and ready to go, then we go and we review that backlog, we prioritize, and then we get to work. So this may be the migration of those legacy applications. It may be, building that community of practice, helping the builders create their own applications, or it could be both. It just depends on your organization and your needs. We also need to stand up application support within our organization here. So, level 3 help desk support, what tools are we going to use? What are our escalation flows going to be? And then often there's a conversation about who supports what application, right? So if an department in your organization creates an application, is the IT department responsible for administering it, to supporting it long-term? What happens when that department builder leaves? How do we handle that process? What do we consider? What's the criteria for being considered an enterprise application that the IT organization would officially support? So there are some conversations that need to be had there to sort of plan out, again, the success and the support of the Power Platform applications long term. Great. So after the support is worked out, then typically our COE is ready to go, right? We're ready to start implementing it and get the wheels rolling. So that was the end of the process there. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, and I just want to echo what was sent through chat. Anybody who's looking for recording of the session along with slides, you absolutely we'll be sending those out over email, or link to the slides and decks, so and recording within 3 to 4 business days. But absolutely, put your questions in the Q&A panel, and let's bring back Angie.
Thanks, Joel and Eric. Just checking the chat window here now for a couple of questions. My apologies. The first question I see is the workflow modernization assessment tool easy to run?
And I can tell you about this. It's a little bit tricky. It's easy to download, and if you use that recommended AD option, where you connect If you have MFA, it takes a little bit longer to get going, but it's mostly about getting it going inside of your Azure AD. So that part of takes a little bit of effort, but it's more about getting the permissions. It's actually going to take you longer to get the permissions that it's going to require to run it than it will be to actually get it going. It does take a little while to run. In fact, you should give it some time because it does have to look at all the different things across your environment. It may take a number of hours depending on the size of your tenant, but it's not super difficult. In fact, I think that Todd's instructions are pretty self-explanatory. But it is a pretty simple tool, and it primarily just takes advantage of this report inside of Excel.
Great, thanks. And second question I see is, what is the best way to get started with Power Platform?
You want to take this one, Eric?
Sure, I'd love to. So I think the best way to get started would be to evaluating your organization, a legacy application or a new application request that would be a good fit for the Power Platform, most likely a Power App with a Power Automate backend, and to sort of create a proof of concept. In addition to creating the proof of concept, just help to educate your organization and stakeholders on the capabilities of the platform. So again, just education and then examples of how it can provide value within your organization. Were there any additional questions, Angie?
Yep. Let me see here. Is Power Automate the primary tool to replace SharePoint Designer for SharePoint workflows moving forward?
And I can take that one as well. So yes.
That's good. That's good. So what's interesting is like you talk about SharePoint Designer being able to be used for kind of building forms. So there is Microsoft Forms, which is a kind of a simplified version of what you might use with building a Power App. So Power App absolutely is much more fully featured for the user interface and the experience. And there's without digging into it very, very, very deep, you have quite a bit of flexibility with different types of directions you might go with Power Apps for building out either an application or a form. And then it's Power Automate that is the workflow side of it. So it's really kind of a combination of these tools. And when you start talking about different things that you can do now with these tools, like the chat bots with Power Virtual Agents and so on.
Great. Our next question is it easy to connect and work with non-Microsoft databases, especially Oracle and AWS Redshift?
So there are over 325 different connectors right now that can be used within the Power Platform. I'm not sure if it was Redshift, if there's one there specifically, but typically the first step is to go to the list of connectors, just do a search to see what's supported. And chances are, if you're using a popular software as a service product, you'll find it in there. If for some reason one hasn't been created yet, some of your pro devs or your more technical resources can create what's called a custom connector, which is sort of a wrapper in the Power Platform that will enable your builders to basically call a service that the third party provides.
Yeah, I've found pretty much if the application has an API, there's kind of some generic webhooks, or even whether it's a JSON requests or being able to interact with another application. There's even generic HTTP type connectors. So there's ways of connecting to the data. It just kind of depends on how rich the application is, and the more popular it is, the more likely there is a connector for it.
Great, and I believe this will be the last question that we have time for today. How can we solve the issues with the SQL connection when it requires the Premium Power Apps license? Because our SQL on-premises, on-prem, not in Azure, and also the SQL in Azure require the premium. Can we use big data similar to SQL in SharePoint?
So, is there a workaround in the Power Platform for, avoiding the use of that premium connector? No, not really any longer that I'm aware of. So if the premium licensing is a hurdle in the organization, we may want to check out the use of the Power Platform and into a custom solution, whether it be in Azure or another platform or whatnot.
Yeah, and I would say as well, like if you find that there's an application you're trying to build that you want everybody in the organization to use that is, say, backed by SQL, you can build those things and do kind of a per app license as well. So there are some other options where it's like very few applications that you want to use broadly, instead of saying everybody can create every application, or everybody, we're going to just use this more broadly. There are kind of the per app licenses kind of scenarios as well.
Super. Thanks, Joel and Eric. And again, if we did not get to your question, we will be sure to address it offline. Given that we're at the top of the hour, we do want to thank you once again for joining us for today's session. As we've previously indicated, you will receive a recording of today's presentation along with the slides within the next few business days. We want to thank you again for joining and have a great day.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Appreciate it.